What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, it's Wednesday, so that means it's crossover time with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres, discussing different scenarios if Shohei Ohtani was to be moved to the NL West. And then we're drafting the best team possible based off trade deadline targets, discussing all that on today's Locked On Diamondbacks.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see my latest work, from my packages to my articles and my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked On Diamondbacks about Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel. And don't forget, this episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour, Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. And about halfway recording that intro, I realized I had my microphone backwards, so the audio probably sounded pretty terrible in the first 45 seconds of that intro. So I'm sorry to anyone who had to listen to that, but now I got the mic correctly adjusted, and now we are off and rolling. Javier, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Is it possible that maybe we should have, I mean, we're off to a weird start, I will say, with our crossover for this week. You're recording in the middle of a undisclosed location, preparing for a security mission. I don't know, MI6 mission. I don't know what's going on with you over here, but I'm really excited to do what will be probably one of our most relevant drafts, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like one that actually is pretty important for the next couple of weeks with the whole trade deadline targets thing. And as always, it's a blast, man. And unlike you, I'm just happy to be in super great quality. I'm not struggling out here. I got the mic set up. You know what I mean? I'm making these roasts right now because I actually think I'm going to get killed in this draft. So that's why I have to get my digs in early before it's too late.
Man, the fam just caught a stray for not getting the Wi-Fi extender in my bedroom. The Wi-Fi for the YouTube audience is not looking strong. The audio is going to be good if you're listening on, audio only. If you're at least watching the YouTube video, the audio is going to be good. But the quality of the video itself, Javi looks fantastic. But me, I'm probably looking a little choppy and a little grainy here today. But it's okay. We're going to power through. And, we're going to be doing a little draft, like Javi said, relevant. Because last week we did, our drafting the best and worst city connect jerseys, and that one you could have done in the offseason. You could have done that one at any time, but this one, drafting trade deadline targets, we got to do this one right now. But before we get into that draft, we first got to talk about the biggest trade deadline target, because he's not going to be eligible in our draft because he just too OD as a player, and that is Shohei Ohtani. I just want to talk a little bit about him with you, Javi, because we just saw, I don't know if you saw, but there was a tweet yesterday saying Artie Moreno is not going to be trading Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And so that makes me feel pretty good as an NL West, rival of that team, the Arizona Diamondbacks. But what do you still put the chances of Ohtani getting traded to the NL West? Maybe the D-backs I talked about on my podcast yesterday, they got the pieces. I don't know if they would think Ohtani wants to sign here long-term. I don't know if they would want to give him the money long-term, but I think on paper it makes sense. A team like the Padres, AJ Preller, always super aggressive. I know it hasn't been this year Hasn't been their year this year, but if you go into next season with a Machado, a Tatis, a Ohtani, a Soto, or Bogarts, like, yeah, you're going to be probably the favorite in the NOS. Or, the San Francisco Giants, they're always a team that's just missing that one superstar. And they tried to get the Carlos Correa this past season. They tried to get the Aaron Judge. Maybe they make it all in play for the Shohei Ohtani. And you can't forget the championship or bust Colorado Rockies, right? I mean, you probably can't forget them. But what are the chances you still think, if any, Ohtani can get traded to the NOS division?
I think that so the Padres came out and AJ Preller basically said that acquiring a superstar isn't exactly the route they're going to take. They're probably going to go around the edges if they do decide to buy at the deadline. I personally find that this is just a really odd deadline for the Padres because they could completely dictate the market, but I don't think that they're going to be major sellers. I think they're going to try and get yourself some relievers and just kind of hope for the best, I think. And I don't know if that's a great strategy, but it seems like barring them really like dropping the next, like, I don't know, like 7 of their next 9 games, then it looks like they'll be mild buyers. So that takes them out. And if they're really not going to trade them to the Dodgers, which I appreciate, then that takes the Dodgers out. That leaves teams like San Francisco and yours, unless for some reason the Rockies, which I know it sounds crazy, but crazier things have happened. Like, how weird the Rockies are. They're so dumb that they would trade their entire farm for half a season of Shohei Ohtani and be even worse off than the Angels. But in all seriousness, I don't know. I mean, the Giants are swinging for a big fish, right? Like, they want to get one. You saw it this past offseason, so it wouldn't surprise me if they try going for it. It's going to be tricky, though, right? Because I think that, Farhan Zaidi over there, he's ready to make a move. I just don't know if they would rather just be like, let's wait until the offseason to try and get him. And then the Dodgers, I think that they just have so many options. I don't think they need Ohtani in the grandest kind of ways. I think that their buying philosophy, which we'll talk about in a little bit, might just be to get some other starting pitchers that are being undervalued maybe across the market currently. Your Jordan Montgomerys, guys like that. I think that could happen, but I don't know, man. We'll see. I think it would be really fun if he went to the Diamondbacks or the Giants. I know that sounds, like ridiculous coming from the Padres fan, but I just don't think that they're going to make that move. And also we have our own set of superstars. So in theory, we don't need another one. But wherever he goes, look, man, if just he is traded, this deadline will be awesome. It's supposed to be a quiet market, but maybe it won't be. Maybe it's having that like late resurgence of, it's actually getting a little bit spicier now. It's weird because the teams that we're supposed to be selling are actually buyers that we thought wouldn't be heading into this trade deadline market. But I'm curious to see how it goes because the return on him is going to be so fascinating, right? There's the potential, Miller, that some team might be out there who's like, let's try him out at closer. Like, it's totally possible that they might want to try and do that for him. And I'm going to be really curious to see how it pans out. Like, again, I really could see like, one of those big boy teams that are already really good, your Rangers, your Reyes, stuff like that, where they're like, oh, well, maybe if we don't want him to start, we could have him be a relief pitcher sometimes. You obviously shouldn't do that because he's a great starter, but I'm just saying we haven't had a player who fits literally every team hit the market like this, I think, in a long time. Juan Soto was the youngest, most rare player to be on the market, I think, in a lot of ways, but the fact that anyone could use Ohtani, anyone can use him in any role, I think adds to it. You got the universal DH, thank God. So that's makes him a buy for potential. I know, right? Seriously. You know how stupid it was watching Blake Snell just watch 3 strikes down the middle looking like a doofus, and it wasn't his fault. It was the dumbest thing in the world. I cannot believe people thought that was fun.
More strategy, Javi. What do you mean? Yeah, the strategy argument was always terrible.
It just didn't make any sense. Like, oh, wait, let me guess. What's the strategy? Oh, we're going to bunt with this pitcher? Yeah, that's what you're going to do. You're going to use him to bunt every single time. It's so dumb.
Yeah, it was very stupid. And the whole like Ohtani narrative right now with the trade deadline, like whoever trades for Ohtani has to have some level of assurance he wants to stay there long term, and you have to be comfortable ponying up the money because no one is going to trade the price tag that's going to get for Ohtani. No one's going to give up that Soto level deal, knowing he could potentially just be a 2-month rental and hit free agency. Whoever trades for Ohtani has to assume he's going to be in the building the next decade plus or whatever, right? So if you're the Angels, I wonder how much that limits you because, like, what kind of package realistically can you get? If you told me Ohtani was under contract the next 3 to 4 years, then yeah, pretty much every team's top 10 prospects in their farm system, like you could trade the whole top 10 for Shohei Ohtani. But knowing he is potentially just a 2-month rental, I wonder if the Angels can even find a deal that would even make sense for a Shohei Ohtani, or does he just get sold super low just because you see it like with Manny Machado and the Baltimore Orioles, right? Like people were saying you should have traded him a year or two prior instead of trading him right before he hit free agency because then you don't get as much return on value. So I wonder if we're going to see the same thing when it comes to the LA Angels and Shohei Ohtani, just because if I don't get that long-term assurance, how can I be confident in giving up every blue chipper I have for Shohei Ohtani?
It's a great point. It's a great point. And I think that, granted, he is the player that's worth it that we've ever seen, even if it's just a rental because of his viability on both sides of the diamond. But to quote Mina Kimes being like, look, you're going to be remembered as the ownership of the team that couldn't win with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. You don't also want to be known as the team that couldn't win with them, and then you also let them go for nothing. And I think that that's the case here. So I think they're going to try and at least get something. If there was ever a rental that could get you premium prospects, it would be this guy. Look, I think that it would be really fun if he went to like a team that's on the up and up, like a Diamondbacks, like a Reds. I think that would be so much fun if he went to the Cincinnati Reds, who are like, you know what? We really like a team like the Reds will never get a player like Ohtani to sign for them, right? So why not do a trade for him? And you're already first place. Maybe you could just have the ultimate run of all time and you still have a pretty stacked farm. Obviously, they're not trading, Ellie De La Cruz, but you have him, you have Ohtani. That could just be really fun if they kind of found a way to do that at the deadline. D-backs, a little bit of the same thing. Like these up and coming teams that probably aren't going to be able to get him in their price range anyway. So why not just try it this way? I think that would be totally. It's a fascinating idea. Because you are getting batter and pitcher. I think that there's a lot more teams secretly that might be in on this. I think we shouldn't underestimate that just because they can't sign him, that they might not want to trade for him. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just trying to prop up the MLB deadline. You know what I mean? Try to get excited, trying to get hyped. But I really do. I think that more teams than we think, I think, are going to be in on this guy than typical for big name free agents or trade deadline targets because they're becoming free. Like you mentioned with the Orioles and Machado, where it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, he gets traded to the Dodgers because that team doesn't mind if he does walk because they're the Dodgers and they can afford anybody. And then they can also re-sign him. So I think it's the story of the deadline though. And I can't wait. And do you think he's getting traded? Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think we're getting the pass and bomb, like at 2:00 p.m., like an hour before the deadline? What do you think?
I really don't know because I think it would be the smartest for the Angels to trade Shohei Ohtani because I don't think he's coming back next season. When the Angels get eliminated, in the first week of September, I don't think Ohtani's going to want to come back to that situation. I even think Mike Trout might be in his ear like, hey, listen, I resigned for the 10-year, $400 million deal. Listen, it's not worth the money. Just go out there and try to win some baseball games and don't be stuck in baseball mediocrity the rest of your career. So I don't think Ohtani's going to resign, but I also don't know. Like, I think teams would want to trade Ohtani, but I think the price tag is going to matter to a lot of these teams. My favorite, honestly, Ohtani conspiracy is just because this fan base, the 180 that they were due from the shallows and the wallows that they've been in the last couple of years, knowing that they got Shohei Ohtani to the Boston Red Sox after you trade Mookie Betts away, you let those Xander Bogarts go, you do this whole weird thing the last couple free agency where you act like you're making no money, you act like you're one of the cheapest teams in baseball, then all of a sudden you're ponying up $500 million for Shohei Ohtani. The fan base would just go crazy. The 180 by that fan base, I think, would be really incredible. But real quick, before we wrap up segment number one, with Artie Moreno talking about how he's not going to trade Ohtani to the Dodgers, how do you just feel about that as a philosophy overall when it's like two teams in the same city or two
Mhm.
rival teams, and they're saying, like, we saw it with the Spurs and Kawhi Leonard. They were like, we're not trading Kawhi Leonard to the Lakers under no circumstance, even though the Lakers would have given up more than any other team for Kawhi Leonard, and they ended up getting, a pretty mid package back. Like, if you're the Angels, if a team is offering you maybe less than the Dodgers, would you take that deal just because you want to spite the Dodgers? Or is this like some kind of ploy where it's like, I'm saying I'm not trading to the Dodgers, knowing the Dodgers are going to come back to the table and maybe offer a few more pieces, and then at that point, I'll accept a deal. So I don't know if this is a leverage tactic by Moreno, or if he's really like, no matter what, they could offer every prospect they have. They could offer Will Smith, Mookie Betts. I'm still not doing the deal to the Dodgers. So how do you feel overall about that kind of philosophy we see sometimes with rivals and trades?
I think that the fact that he said it publicly gives credence to your point that like this might just be a negotiating tactic. I also think that here's my take on the whole like trading within your division or whatever it is. I think it is awesome. I think it is so fun.
Okay.
And it gives sports meaning and life that we have people being so petty that they're like, we refuse to trade, say, a Red Sox player to the Yankees or the Yankees player to the Red Sox. I think it is awesome. And I think this is another layer of pettiness because the Angels and the Dodgers aren't even the same conference. Or I guess same league, American League and National League. So that would just you being petty based on the city. I love it though. Is it smart? Absolutely not. You just mentioned the Kawhi Leonard thing with the Lakers. Like, I think you should be getting the best deal for your team. No like fan is going to be like, wow, it was really annoying when you trade that player to our rival. Even though we got awesome prospects from it and we're like better off, it's really bad that you gave it to. No. You want to beat the rival. You don't really care about giving them a player necessarily. But again, I love it though. I love the pettiness. I want it more, right? I want to get reports that it's like the Padres turned down, 10 top 10 prospects for Juan Soto just because the Dodgers asked for him. I think it's fun. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for sports in general. But I would say for teams, it is very much not smart to avoid better deals, particularly when it's like in this case with the Angels and Dodgers. It's not like you're going to be playing against Ohtani nonstop, right? At least with the in division thing, It's like, wow, like we're hurting ourselves by giving away that player, and he gets to do it against us. So I get that part, but again, man, I think it would be a blast. But I think it's a tactic. If you're going to be this public, like why be public like that? I think it's a little weird.
Yeah, I absolutely love the increased pettiness. And we see it, the good and bad from that pettiness because, like, when Damon went from the Red Sox to the Yankees and he was like, oh, yeah, the Yankees, they really know how to do it good over there. Like, that hurt Boston Red Sox fans. But then when you see, like, Jacoby Ellsbury go from the Red Sox to Yankees and he just is absolutely terrible for his whole time in New York, as a Red Sox fan, you're like, yeah, you want to go to a better situation. Look what happened to you. The grass is always greener. So those are some positives and negatives they could see from both sides.